Oh, looks like we're live. Meeting is now streaming live. Okay. I'm gonna make sure that we delete some of that stuff besides what's on Facebook because you guys are hearing us live. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Burton, broker owner of CMB Realty Services. License number 014715440. You guys don't have to say that. Get that out the way. So I'm really excited because I wanted to do something just a little bit differently. A lot of times we do home education seminars and home buyer seminars and home seller seminars, and it's all about us and our lenders. But I thought it was important that we do something a little bit different, which is understanding the real estate process and who's on your team. Now, this is just part of my team because when it comes to real estate, it's more than just our title, our escrow lenders. We have home inspectors, we have termite inspectors, we have mold inspectors, we have all types of inspectors, and there's other parts of it. And even within their organization, it's not just the faces you see, they have people under them that work. So you're dealing with, they said, anywhere from 17 or 27 people within one file. But today we're only going to talk about 4 of us because we don't have time for all of that. So I'm really excited for this. And if you guys have questions, I will be watching on my cell phone. So if you guys see my head down, it's because we're live and I want to watch on my cell phone if you have any questions. So first of all, I'm going to introduce our team here. Donna couldn't be on video, personal reasons, nothing terrible. So, but she's here. You still see her beautiful face. Donna is with First American Title. And Donna, if you want to just let them know how long you've been in the business.
I have been in the business 21 years this year.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
In the industry, I should say.
Oh, in the industry, yes.
Yes, in the industry. In title, it's about 8, 9 years, going on 9. Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I think it's
Time
been
flies.
when I met you, you were, I think, doing home warranty.
NHD.
NHD. Okay. Okay.
I think that was 2014 when I first met you.
You know, it's crazy how time flies. I didn't
It
realize it was
does.
that long. Yeah. Awesome. Then I want to introduce Melanie Cisneros. I met Melanie through Women's Council, and she was supporting the Inland Valley at the time. And she said, you know, if you have more events on this side, it will be great. And they were talking about opening up a network over there. And Melanie was like, oh, I would love to help. She dove in, and she has been a part of Women's Council for what, since 2019, 18, 19?
Yeah, we started Foothills West in 2019. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. So Melanie, tell them a little bit about you and your company.
So yes, I have been a part of Women's Council for I think since 2018. I think that's when you were president and we were a strategic partner then. And I love that you and I got to start Foothills West together. Like that's very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing me into that. I appreciate it. But I'm with Inland Empire Escrow, and I've been in the escrow industry for 23 years, which makes me scratch my head because how is that possible? I like to say I started when I was 7, so we're gonna stick to that. So yeah, I've done a lot of different things throughout my 23-year career. I've even done title escrow up in San Jose, so it's kind of interesting. I've gotten to see a lot of the different parts of the transaction and gotten a lot of different experiences with both title escrow and independent. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. And by the way, Donna, I'm sitting here looking at my video. We don't even see your face, but it's okay. We'll see it on the replay, or your picture. We'll see it. We should see it on the replay, hopefully.
Okay.
So just FYI, but we can hear your voice.
Okay.
And then we have Chris Daddario. Let me tell you about Chris. I met Chris in 2020, 2019, 2020, right before the pandemic. I believe it was when we met, or right before. And I remember when I met Chris, his client that came to me, which was someone I went to school or church with, she gave me a pre-qualification letter. So I was like, I'm not working with anybody with a pre-qualification letter, but she wasn't supposed to give me the pre-qualification letter. It was supposed to be a pre-approval letter. So I took her to my lender. My lender could not do what they were supposed to do. And then I said, okay, we're going to try Chris. Chris was the first lender that took my client could have took us from day 1 to day 20, 2/23 to close a FHA deal. I did not know it was even possible because I'd never experienced anything like that. He had already had the pre-approval. He had everything. And the only reason we didn't close early was because the seller did not pay or complete their HOA corrections of what they were supposed to do. So we could not close early because of the seller. And so I was shocked, and I have been using him ever since, and he has been such a blessing. So Chris, tell me a little bit more about you.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name's Chris Daddario, mortgage broker with Express Capital. Been in this industry similar time frames as these other ladies. I'm coming up on 22 years in a month. So yeah, 22 years. Been through a lot of change in this industry. So
Yep.
I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that
Yes,
as we go along.
yes. So, all right. So we're gonna get down to the nitty gritty. If anybody's watching live, even if you're watching it on a replays, please feel free to ask a question. So one of the things that I thought was important was to bring us all together so we can talk about the process. What does it look like? So I'm gonna kind of pass the ball a little bit. So what happens is this. When you're looking to purchase a home, the first person you're going to contact 9 times out of 10 is going to be the realtors. The reason why I wanted to bring all of my partners on as well is because I want you to know who am I calling when you contact me. So when it comes to a buyer, once I get a phone call, the first person I'm connecting my clients with is the lender. So what I do is I'll have a conversation with you as the buyer and ask just a few questions. Usually with my buyers, our first conversation is no more than, on average, 5 minutes, because I want to know your motivation for buying. I like to know how's your credit, how's your financing. I don't ask you how much you make because that wouldn't help me. It's going to help the lender. And then I find out, are you in the military? So there's these probing questions that I'm going to ask. And what happens is once I ask those questions, I say, okay, great. If you don't mind, I don't care what your credit looks like. I don't care if you think your credit is the worst credit in the world. I don't care about that. My thing is, how can I get you with the lender? So what I do is I pick up the phone and I call Chris and say, hey, Chris, I have a buyer that's looking to purchase a property. Can you talk to my client? This is the scenario. I put you all in a group chat, you make an appointment and you go from there. From there, now I'm going to hand it over to Chris and he's going to explain what he does when he works with you as a buyer.
Yeah, thank you, Kama. So yeah, going through that format, like Kama said, she's going to send out typically a text message or could be a phone call too, however it is, some kind of communication linking the three of us up together. And from that point, you're going to see me respond to that as well too. And we're going to set up a time to talk on the phone. Going back to Kama's time frame, she's about 5 minutes on her first call. Mine's probably more about like 10 to 15 minutes. And we have tools that we can certainly take an application where I can send you a link and you can do that online. But what I've found is that if we typically can have a 15-minute conversation, I can learn more about you that way, learn more about your goals. If you think there might be some pain spots that we need to look at and see that we might have to overcome, I can find out a little bit more on that than just by sending you a link and, with yes or no questions, things like that too. So typically that's how I do it is I start out by taking the initial application, finding more about potential down payment, your income situation, what that looks like, typically your rental history, or if you own a home currently, what your 12 to 24 month history looks like with that. Going back to the income again, that's also about 24 months. And then from there, we're typically going to get the information where if we're ready to start the pre-approval process, where I would gain the social security number and we would talk about the difference on whether we would be doing a soft credit check for you or potentially a regular credit check for you too. There are a difference between two, and sometimes depending on the loan type that we're doing, it could potentially be more beneficial to do a regular credit pull rather than a soft. So we're going to answer those kind of questions, and that allows me to start the process and then request from you the needed items that I would need to complete the pre-approval process.
Awesome. So just a quick question for you, Chris. I typically would run across buyers that are like, well, I don't want to talk to the lender because I'm not ready. Mm-hmm. And you know me, I'm like, I don't care if you're ready or not. You were ready when you called me. So let's get you prepared to get you even more ready, because, you know, we don't know when we'll really be ready if we don't talk to the professionals. So if
Sure.
somebody is like, calls you and say, well, Chris, I know my credit scores are at 505 or at 540, what's the typical thing you would tell a buyer who might be afraid because either they don't have the credit or maybe they don't have the financing, the closing costs or down payment to come in with?
Sure. I mean, first off is don't be afraid. You know, everybody has to start somewhere. You know, you are where you are today. It doesn't mean that that's where you'll be tomorrow. And then we try to go from there and see what the scenario is. Sometimes people can be surprised where, you know, sometimes we get people that are just think everything has to be perfect, where it's like, you know, they'll say, oh, I don't know about my credit. And it's like, look at your credit and you're like 760. Like you're
Yeah.
good. They're like, yeah, but I just haven't, so I haven't done that. You know, I'm like, no, you're good. But going to the other spectrum too, certainly, you know, if the credit's not perfect or if the credit needs improvement, you know, it doesn't hurt to still go through the consultation. And then if you are serious about this, trying to formulate a plan where if for some reason you do not qualify today, that we can help put you, at least give you something, you know, to potentially work on to improve your scores. So you can, you know, do this if this is something that obviously you're interested in doing, you know. And, you know, to that degree too, the credit doesn't have to be perfect. We do have credit programs too, depending on the situation where, you know, sometimes can go all the way down to a 500 credit score. Not all the time, but there are some cases depending on what it is and where you're at. So, you know, kind of piggybacking what Common's saying is that, you know, you don't really know until you get all the pieces of the puzzle. And credit, while it certainly is a big piece of the puzzle, there are some other compensating factors that can go along with that, which you might even be able to be approved right now, or if not, you know, certainly we're going to try to get you going in the right kind of direction where you can be approved at a hopefully not too long of a date from now.
Beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. All right. So now we're going to talk to those that are looking. We're going to talk about how they all work together, but I want to share with you how I work when it comes to someone that wants to put their home up for sale. And I will tell you, there's a lot of people now considering listing their property, and there is a process. And I believe, if anybody knows me, I believe in educating. I believe in being educated, knowing what's going on up front, because if you're going to hire me to represent you, I want to make sure I've done all of my due diligence. So I take a couple of steps before I meet with a client. So I'll give an example. I do have a listing appointment that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And what I would normally do is contact the lender, the title company first. I contact title first and I'll say, hey, Donna, I have and this is something that Donna's going to be working with me on. And this is actually a perfect example. I told her, I said, I have a client and the client has, potential client wants to put their house up for sale. Can you check with, check for liens or check for certain things? I'm going to share with you the story after I let her talk, and we'll kind of have dialogue about it and why it's important to make sure you do this up front. But what do you do, Donna, when I call or someone from my office may call and ask you to pull some information without pulling a full title report? What does that look like?
So, hi, thank you. So what I normally do is we'll pull a property profile, and in layman's terms, I just like to call it a report card on a property. Tells us who's, the owner, how many bedrooms, the bathroom count, tells us specs on the property. And so that's normally what I send you, right? And so then we review that together sometimes, make sure who you're talking to that wants to sell it is able to sell it, right? So we look at the vesting, and then after you go get your signed listing agreement is when we order what's called the preliminary title report. So that's what my first step is looking for any liens or judgments, who's vested, and then I send you that report, the property profile.
So a couple of months ago, back in December, I contacted you because I had a client that wanted to list the property. And the property, when I talked to the client, she said, oh, we have a trust. Well, when I looked on title, I noticed that before I contacted Donna, because I'll look at we have a system we can look at information. But what I noticed was the home was not in the trust. As a matter of fact, ironically, everybody that's on the screen here today is actually a part of this process. So I contacted Donna and I said, hey, Donna, I don't see the name on the trust. So she Matter of fact, no, Donna, I looked, but Donna also, I gave it to her. She said, well, I don't see any information about a trust or anything being recorded. So we got a copy of a trust. I don't know if you remember this, but we got a copy of the trust and we noticed that the trust name, although the house was in the trust, the house was not recorded in the
Was it
trust
because,
name.
was it one of the ones where they refied and didn't put it back in?
No, what happened
Oh,
was this particular issue, and this is important for you guys to know. Please hear me clearly for those that are listening. What happened was my client, her mom had put the house in a trust, and then
yes.
not too long later, she ended up passing away. But she put the home itself, it's in the physical trust document, but it was
It
not
wasn't recorded.
recorded. Right. So what happens in
Correct.
situations like that?
Well, as long as we can show proof, right? They had prepared the trust, the paperwork wasn't complete by going to the county recorder's office and having that recorded.
Hmm.
So I believe, well, what could happen is once we go into escrow, we can provide that to my unit, meaning my title officer, and title officer and escrow will work together to make sure we get that recorded back into the trust. But signatures have to match. We have to verify because obviously if there's a decedent on a property, they're not here to say, yes, I intended it to be in a trust. So we're going to compare signatures, notaries. We're going to verify that everything is legit to make sure that we can record the document for the decedent and then go ahead and close or allow the person that's supposed to be able to sell it through the trust.
So with this situation, she had to go to court. What did she have to file?
Did a petition? Did she have to file a petition?
She did a
Was it
hex
a
stat.
hexstat?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she filed a hex stat, and what a hex stat did was it basically says we knew that the intent was for this property to go into escrow. And I mean, go into the intent was that the title was to read as the trust, right? Am I saying that right?
That's right. You're right. Okay, now I remember. Yep.
Yes. So we got that approved. She just sent us the documents, Chris, recently. Last week she sent it. She went to court early March. They approved it. So we're working on potentially getting a listing here soon. But that's why it's important to get with title because for me, I could have put the house up for sale. We go through this whole rigmarole. I never talked to title and title say, you know what, this might be a court case. This might turn into a probate. Where's your proof? What do we have to do? So her department, they contacted me and said, look, and actually first Donna said, look, you're going to probably have to do a hex stat. They're looking at some more information. We ended up doing it, done, clean, ready to go. Okay. So she's good to go. But that's why it's important to make sure that you reach out to title and you find out this information because who wants to find out about this when they get an accepted offer? Buyers are waiting. And let me just ask you, Chris, before I get to Melanie, what happens if we went into escrow with a client, we found out this stuff out, I didn't do my due diligence, you get a copy of the preliminary report, everything seems good, and I'm like, uh-oh, Chris, looks like they have to go to court, it's going to be 3 months. What happens to that buyer? And the
Oh boy, I mean, a whole nother thing, right? I mean, chances are they're not going to want to stick around. Number one, potentially depending what kind of cost they put into this to get their loan, that could open up the seller to litigation as well too, or mediation, I should say. So it's just a road that obviously, you don't want to encounter or want to go down if you could avoid it. So
yeah.
But yeah, you're going to definitely have a pretty bummed out buyer.
Yeah, because I mean, you look at interest rates. What if they only locked it for a certain amount of time? Right.
Yeah.
So things like that. That's why it's important to know the stuff up front. So what happens is in the midst of getting information back from title, I begin to do my comparables. I check to see how much the property is worth. Once I figure out how much the property is worth, I get back whether there are anything on the property. Matter of fact, while I'm thinking about it, Donna, is there something that will help you as title instead of me just calling you and say, hey, Donna, can you check for liens? Is there a form that the sellers can fill out so that way you can do something a little bit more accurate?
Yes, well, here's the one thing about working with First American Title is we have our own data. We don't depend on a third party. So when you do call me asking me to check for either liens or judgments, then we do what's called a GI run, a general index run. Or if we have a common last name, then that's when I ask you for that statement of information. And then that's when that's filled out and we can do an even deep dive a deeper search on the property and the person.
Awesome. Oh, I have a question for Chris. Melanie, I haven't forgot about you. I have a question. So,
I'm enjoying this.
so let's just say you were working with a buyer who, because the buyer fills out the statement of information, correct? They fill it out as well.
Both parties do. Yeah, the
fill out-
buyers do.
The
Buyers do
buyers do too. What if somebody filled out a statement of information for a buyer who said they were a first-time home buyer and a house came up? Does that ever happen? It hasn't happened with me, so it just came to mind. They found out they owned a property and they were in the middle of doing like some kind of down payment assistance program, and you weren't aware that they owned a house. Does that ever happen?
Well, usually it happens when they do know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
They
very
just didn't
rare.
disclose, like, hey, I owned the
Yeah,
house 2
yeah,
years
that
ago.
was kind of more back in like the short sale days, Ario, where it was like, did you have anything happen in the past?
Yeah.
Innocent till proven
Okay.
guilty.
Okay. Okay.
No, but I mean, I typically if something like that were to happen, I think that would probably come from something of like a trust of some potential type of inheritance that they might not be aware of. I personally, in my 23 years, haven't had anything like that derail a transaction. Um, but
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe they inherit
Look,
something, they became a cash buyer, and they don't need me.
common tends to get these worst case scenarios. God forbid something like that happens. We work
Come
through
on, I
it.
do come on.
Okay.
Oh, can I add though? I
Yeah.
do want to say our company, First American, does not run SIs on buyers though.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's just a fun fact.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. That's
Mhm.
good to know.
Yeah.
So once I talked to Donna, she's giving me the paperwork, giving me the liens, if any. And the liens, to let you guys know, you have a voluntary lien and an involuntary lien. So a voluntary lien is going to be your mortgage. Okay. That's a voluntary lien. An involuntary lien could be like a mechanic's lien, it could be a child support, spousal support, maybe you didn't pay a bill, something like that. Those are various liens. So once I get that information from what they can pull, because let me tell you guys, things can come on later. But to the current information they give, I take that information, then I contact Escrow. And Escrow will then give me a net sheet. And the reason I contact Escrow, and I know that like First American has an app, there's apps and things out there, but I contact them because I feel more confident when they're running the numbers, and sometimes I have questions and all of that. So I give it over to Escrow and then say, Escrow, here's the numbers. What do you all do with those numbers as far as you put it in the system? How do you guys run those numbers for us?
Yeah, so that's what we'll do. We'll put them into our system. We typically take what the purchase price is, what they're selling the property for, if they have a mortgage, a current mortgage, if they're going to have a payoff, we'll put that in there. And it's rough numbers at this point. An estimate is just that, and it's pretty rough in the beginning. We don't have that payoff in front of us to be able to give you exact numbers, but yeah, so we do a rough estimate of what that payoff will be. We'll even contact the county, get what the property taxes are at the moment so that we know if the taxes need to be paid, if there's delinquent taxes and things, we can put that on there as well. So there's no surprises at this when you're working with your seller to say, hey, this is what you're going to get. Typically, any other information that you have, we put the commissions in there. We'll put an NHD if you're going to order that. We put the title, we'll work with title and we'll get their title fees. We'll put that on there in our escrow fees. So it gives you a good number to give your seller that they're going to receive once the transaction closes.
Awesome. Awesome. And one thing with escrow is like is it the nucleus? Because
Yeah.
with everything we end up with escrow, right? Whether you're working with a buyer or you're working with the seller, I'm working with a buyer or seller, everything ends up with escrow. So escrow, let's talk about what you do. So when let's talk about buyers, because a lot of times the sellers have already, or owners, because they're not sellers, so they sign contracts. The owners have already kind of gone through the process, and some of them might want to be buyers again. So I get a file, I have a listing. I'm like, okay, great. Guess what? We have an open file. We send everything over to escrow. Escrow, what do you do? And who do you send things out? Like, what do you get? What do you need for the process? And
So
who are you? Who are you as escrow?
So we are the nucleus. Like, that's exactly right. Like Chris mentioned, puzzle, his puzzle pieces. We get to put all of the puzzle pieces together. Every part of the transaction. We have the fun job, the pleasure of working with all of the different parts, all of the different people, from the lender to the title to both agents, transaction coordinators, the NHD, all of those other, and termite, all of the people. We get to work with all of them, and we gather information. We're the information gatherers and putting the pieces together. So once we're gonna get that purchase contract from our agents, and we're gonna get the information we need from that contract. We're gonna put that same information we're gonna put into our escrow instructions, which makes it's a lot less than your purchase contract, so it's a little bit easier to read. Sometimes there's still some legalese and some, wording in there that's a little more difficult, but it's a lot easier to read than that purchase contract. It's a lot more simplified and a lot more condensed. And so we put those pertinent things in there. If there's going to be a termite inspection and report, and who's going to pay for that, what parties are going to pay for the different things. If there's an NHD, insurance, it talks about all those little fun things. And we'll send those out to both the buyer and the seller. Now, the buyer gets a different package than the seller does. The seller's package comes with some tax forms that they're going to need to fill out, that we need to work with the government to send out in. Well, we don't want to talk about that part. But there's some tax forms and things that we need to fill out for IRS and things like that. But the buyer's going to get their own package, and that statement of information is a huge thing, because Donna says her company doesn't run that, which is great. But we do need to get that information over to the title company if they need that. It also has a buyer information sheet that we ask for. Are you going to purchase, or are you going to occupy the property? Where do you want documents sent after the close of escrow if you're not going to occupy the property right away? Who's your insurance company? Because we, again, have to work with that insurance company to get the paperwork that we need to be, to get over to the lender, which I think at this point they probably have already received it. But so that's what we do. We'll send out those things. We'll send out wiring instructions, and always, and I say this no matter who I'm talking to, always call your escrow company before sending a wire. Always call to verify that information that's on those wiring instructions that was sent out to you, because the wire fraud is crazy out there. So always call before sending a wire.
Awesome.
Melanie, I just want to stress though, I meant we don't run them on buyers though, unless the lender okay.
Right.
Definitely okay.
Oh yeah, which is understandable. I mean, to a point, it's absolutely understandable, and kind of makes the process a little less convoluted, a lot less smooth, or a lot more smooth, I think, maybe.
Right. But sellers, yes, definitely.
Right.
And then of
Yeah.
course, if the lender or escrow is asking for it, well, yeah, we're gonna do what you guys are requesting, right? But we just don't generally run them like, other title companies. So
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
You know what? And that title, that SI is super important. I was working with someone who, it was like a divorce situation. He wanted to use me, she wanted to use somebody else. They ended up going with her person. But this was a couple of years ago. I had someone pull title. Well, because of the name was a very common name. So there was a couple of $1,000s of a lien on there. And what happens, because he was like, that's not me. I don't even know what that is. What happens, Donna, when you do run an SI, statement of information, for those that don't know? Oh, and by the way, based on, sorry, we got a question on Facebook. I'm going to answer it live, even though I answered it from Alana. She said, what is if the seller only wants to sell to you? Does that help? Actually, I put yes. But if a seller wants to sell to you, they can still hire an agent, which I strongly suggest to do so, because I believe that everybody needs some type of representation, because you want to make sure you understand what you're going through. As to why I'm doing this, because most people, if they want to sell a house on their own, they don't have a title company or escrow company. They don't know anything about how to work with a lender, because if something goes wrong, there's so many different types of things that can happen in a process, that when you're not represented, how do you know to contact the lender and what questions to ask and things to look for and things like that? So can a seller sell directly to you? Absolutely. But do you want representation? Absolutely. So that's important, not just because I'm the real estate broker, you should use me, of course, but because I know the importance of what we do. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, Donna.
Yes.
So back to what you were saying about the SI and the person's like, that's not me. What do we do in that instance?
Well, the SI will clear it, because we're going to ask, the SI asks for the social, their address, where they've worked. So it definitely narrows down who a common last name in Riverside would be. So yes, an SI will clear all of that up.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, the lender, Chris. So when you're working, and we're going to be wrapping up here soon, when you're working and we open up escrow. So, the beginning part of this, you all, is that when you're buying a property, I'm the first person, and I'm going to be selfish today because it's my live, it's my channel, and I'm talking about me, okay? Because I want you to call me, right? So I'm working with the buyer, taking the buyer around, showing them property. You've already given us the pre-approval letter. We have our proof of funds in place. We make an offer, and yes, we just got the deal. Congratulations to the buyer. What is it that you want from me sorry, not just from me, because I know you need a copy of the purchase agreement, but what's the first thing you're going to do or need from the buyer when the buyer gets accepted? And what are some tips you would give them to do or not to do while they're going through the process?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, which most buyers have heard about these days, which is great, but you can't hear it enough, is that if you're writing offers on property, don't take out, don't take out any new credit.
None.
Keep the credit scores up, make all your payments on time, what we call kind of the basics, but be good at the basics, do that kind of stuff. I've had situations happen where someone's been pre-approved and they've been well qualified, and they said, "Hey, Chris, I just really need to buy this car." And, I'll look at that and say, okay, yeah, if you're well qualified, and if you need to do this, you got to do it, So there are cases that we typically just recommend if they're really active in the buying process, not to say that you can't take out no new credit, but definitely talk to your lender first before you were to do that. Now, going to the question about once the offer is accepted and what happens then, what we ask from the buyer, really the first thing we do is go with escrow. That's when we kind of talk about this nucleus and where everything comes together. And as you mentioned, escrow is really at the center of this. So the first thing that we're doing is hopefully the agent has the escrow contacts information on the contract, which most of the time it does. But if not, we're asking that, hey, okay, this is with Inland Empire Escrow or whoever it is, escrow company. Do you have a direct contact over
Inland
there?
Empire.
Sure. Exactly. So then we're going to ask for Melanie's information, and then we're going to get that contact information. The first thing that I'm going to do is request the estimated title and escrow costs, because those vary based on two different things, the purchase price and also the loan amount. And it can vary too from companies. So it's not a set thing. And the good thing is there's a lot of laws that protect the consumer. And one of them is that we have to disclose the correct amount of fees. And for myself, being a long veteran, I want to get all that information out there, go over with my clients right away. So number one, they're already kind of expecting it ahead of time. We go through the pre-approval process. We let them know what they can generally expect for closing costs, as Kama negotiates and she's aware of. Sometimes closing costs can be paid by either the buyer or the seller. So there are some workarounds if for some reason somebody didn't have the funds for closing. But regardless of that, we need to know what those costs are, and we need to disclose those right away. And by doing that, that allows us to really get the ball started and having the consumer complete their disclosures. And Then we can order the appraisal if one's needed, which there are times where an appraisal will not be needed. But if it is needed, we want to do that as quickly as possible because we have contingency dates that we need to follow in that transaction. And then we also, once we send out your initial disclosures, once those are completed, we can actually turn in this file into underwriting and get the full approval to work towards closing.
Awesome.
So we want to do all those things as quickly as possible once an offer is accepted.
Yes, and let's talk about that because I want to talk to Escrow about that. The importance of making sure that everything is in order. That's one of the things I talk about because, you know, once a buyer goes into escrow, the first question is, when are we closing? Hold on. Let's get to point A, okay?
Right.
But one of the big things that I tell them is that honestly, a lot of this sometimes depend on you because we need to make sure you're filling out the paperwork, you're getting information to the to the appropriate people right away. And when we go in under contract, we have specific times that we have to turn things in. The seller has specific times and dates they have to, or dates, I should say, they have to get things over to us. So it is our job as the real estate professional to make sure that we follow this. It is all in our contract. So one of the things that's required is in our contract for California is defaulted that we have the seller has or the buyer has 17 days to review a preliminary title report. However, we have 5 days to get all of this stuff back over once we get it, like signing off on the title, signing off on escrow instructions. So it's important that we follow these steps because when you don't, it harms whether you're the buyer or the seller. So let's talk about escrow instructions. I said I know we were going to try to wrap up, but let's talk about escrow instructions. So you have the escrow, you get the information, we give it to you, escrow. What do you do and when do you send it to the buyers and the sellers in the process?
So we process escrow instructions as soon as we get that EMD. So, and you know, we're supposed to get that right away. So as soon as that comes into our office, we'll process those escrow instructions and send them out. And you're absolutely right about getting back the information as soon as we can, because those are some of the things that we have that will hold up a transaction is if we don't have that seller information sheet back. And that's one of the documents that we send out with the escrow instructions right away. And that's one of our most important documents that we need to have back along with that statement of information so that we can send that out to the title company to start review and to start working on any liens that may have popped up. But in addition to that, that seller information sheet, that's going to come back with the payoff information. It's going to come back with an HOA information, any solar, those types of things. Those are 3 things that really can hold up a transaction. There are banks out there that don't work as quickly as others and will hold up getting a payoff. So the sooner we can order that payoff, the better. Then we can get that over to the title company and we can get that estimate a little bit more refined for you. HOA documents, sometimes they take forever to get us what we need. And then we'll end up having to order a rush, and that's an outrageous amount sometimes. It can be up to $2,500 to $3,000 just on a rush fee. We've seen $6,000. We've seen a seller pay $6,000 in just HOA fees to order the documents and to put a rush on it. And sometimes that means there could be 2 or 3. There's a development in Chino. It's called the Preserve, and some of that area they have 3 HOAs. Yep. So we need to get those ordered as soon as possible. Solar liens pop up. Solar is a difficult thing. I think they've gotten a little bit better, but solar was a nightmare for us for a long time. So the sooner we can get that information back, the faster we can order those things and hopefully help our transaction go through more smoothly.
So I'm going to tell my secret. Agents get on me about this and brokers all the time. I try to get as much information up front. They're like, well, you got to disclose, you got to do this, you got to do that. I'm like, but I'm trying to save my clients deal by making sure we have everything. One of the big things that I think is important, if it's able to be done, is that I ask my sellers to order their home ownership documents because it's defaulted in our listing agreement 5 days after we take the listing. Now, we used to be able to do it. I guess some HOAs are like, now I just want to enforce particular buyer. I don't know, but I strongly encourage them to do that. Why? Because when you always tell people, you come to me, come up against an agent like me who understands how things work, people can use that against you. Not that I would do it on purpose, but if for whatever reason the seller's like not doing what they're supposed to do and the buyer's through, you can't sign off on contingencies of home ownership documents if you don't have them. So the more we have information up front, the better. So when I work with sellers, I try to get the preliminary title report, at least the information in, which I'm going to talk to Donna about that, and then we're going to wrap up for real, for real. Then I'm going to I suggest that my clients order a termite inspection so they don't have surprises, because if they get a veteran who requires clear termite, or they end up with an FHA buyer who may ask for the eaves, at least they have an estimate of what that looks like right now. So I try to say, what can I do to do up front? That way, when it comes down to the beginning of the not the beginning, when we're in it, we have everything in order. My thing is, I don't want my side as a listing side to be the reason why the buyers decide to walk, because we don't have our stuff in order. And so I think it's super duper important to make sure that you have your stuff in order. But that's why I just work a little differently. I find in the industry I'm not the same, but it's all right. So with that said, Donna, my question for you as I end this part of the segment is that I feel like title is almost like the quiet partner when it comes to real estate, which is not a bad thing. Quiet in the sense that what is your role? What do you all do? Because we get a lot of stuff from Escrow, but what is your role?
So we work closely. We're business partners, right, to you guys. I mean, I really don't work. I mean, yes, Escrow directs business our way and we work with Escrow, but they mainly work with my unit, my title officer. I'm what we call a title rep. So I'm a representative going out, being a business partner to real estate agents, showing them our tools, how we can help them, providing tools and data so they can go out and get business. So it's an insurance company, but then we also have data that we can provide agents and help them go out and get business. Does that answer your question? So silence in a sense where we really, as a title rep, unless your client wants to call and ask me questions, which, I do have agents that give my number out, but for the most part, I'm working closely with the agent, not necessarily the end, client.
And if I can add, title has a huge role. They may be silent, but they have a huge role because we're working really closely, like you said, with that title unit, that title officer. We're working with them to clear any liens that pop up. They're gonna run the address, they're gonna run the seller's name to make sure that no liens pop up on that property. And if it does, they clear it. That's their job. So they're ensuring that title is clear. Once that buyer takes possession, there's no liens, the taxes have been paid. They're the ones. So what happens when the lender funds that loan after the buyer has signed the loan documents? They fund that loan and they send all the money to the title company. Title company will then make that payoff for that current mortgage and clear that lien and record that reconveyance, so that lien's removed off of that property. They make sure the taxes are paid as well, and then they send us us at Escrow the remaining funds, so that we can then make sure everybody else is paid out at the end. The agents, the lender, and everybody else that's involved, termite and whoever, and all the other entities that we mentioned earlier on in this call. But
Yeah,
they do. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I was gonna say I was gonna add on a question for Donna once you're finished.
Oh, okay. So they do have they're more silent behind the scenes, but they have a huge role in it.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
It's important. Insurance is important. I see people out there that, it's not a required, you don't have to, you don't have to get title insurance to buy a property, but I would never suggest that, because you definitely don't want to purchase a property and have a previous owner tied to it still, right? So yes, definitely recommend getting title insurance.
And Donna,
I
Yeah,
don't
that
think
was
lenders
question for
will
you.
lend on a property without it either, right?
no,
Chris?
that was a
Right.
recommendation where for Donna, just maybe if we have some first-time home buyers that might be listening on this and or sellers too.
Yeah.
If you could just kind of just real briefly explain title insurance and maybe just a brief breakdown of kind of the difference between an owner's policy and also a lender's title policy. I think it's really important for the consumer to know.
And the
Sure.
agents, because many of them don't. So
So title insurance, well, I'm laughing because Tom and I were on the phone yesterday. So we ensure that the buyer is buying a property without any clouds, any liens, judgments on that property, right? And when the buyer is buying a property and they have a loan, they also need a lender side policy. So there's two separate policies, but it's the same insurance company. So yes, so it's important when you are buying a property to definitely use First American.
So if I have an owner's policy and somebody sticks a flag in my front yard and says that this is their property now because they stuck a flag in my front yard, does my owner's policy kind of protect me in that event if somebody else files a claim on my property that they are the rightful owner of it?
Yes, of course, we will definitely represent you, or we'll figure out who really owns it. I mean, that sounds crazy, but yeah, I'm sure that could happen, right?
look, it's
Right.
California.
I
Anything.
know, you're
No,
right, you're right. I got a call last week about someone saying that the fence was it is the neighbors and it's actually on the current homeowner's property. So yes, we're in California. People are going to claim on properties, and that's what title insurance is for.
There you go. So consumers, when you see that, that's the reason why you have it. You're paying a lot of money for this transaction. You want to make sure it's properly insured.
Yep.
Well, when we're insuring a property, it's a one-time fee. It's a small investment for lifetime protection. So yes, it's not a huge chunk, but it's definitely worth it. It's not like car insurance where it's a monthly, payment. It's just a one-time fee depending on the sales price of the home. So
Yeah, and I think all of this is important because it shows that everybody that's in this process is needed. And that's the
Mhm.
point of all of this, to show, even although I said that title is silent, but if the title's not right, we don't close. One of the biggest questions that I get is, well, I don't want, can I close the house will I be able to close if they have liens on it? Or am I going to be responsible? No, the beauty is that our purchase agreement talks about and lets the buyer know that you will buy this property free and clear of any liens. Now, you may have easements and things like that. It's a little different, whole other
Sure.
conversation we're not going to get into today, but there are some things out there you need to know and understand. And it's important that you make sure you know your team, you know the people you're working with. I do see, I see my auntie Vanessa on there. Hey, auntie. But I had to give her a shout out. But I see that there are some agents out there as well that are watching, and I think it's important, not only do you just have people on your team, but you know what they do. You don't have to be the person that explains exactly everything to your client, but you can say, you know what? I'm going to give you over to Donna. Have a conversation with her. She's going to explain to you how things work, because I'm sure Donna has dealt with, because I know I dealt with a situation where we got all the way to the end. It was in the short sale days, my very first short sale. A $9,000 lien popped up right before we were supposed to close. Oh my gosh, $9,000 lien. Hey, y'all, guess who paid for it? I did. I had to pay for
Wow.
my compensation. Yes, let me tell you why I paid for it. Long story short, I got the seller. My uncle was looking for a property. I was able to put them together. She was about to lose her house. We didn't know how this whole thing was going to work. So I was able to get both ends of it. And I gave up almost just about half of my commission because I wanted them to close. And those are the things that we don't talk about, and things that we're going to be talking about. Because, by the way, for those that don't know, I'm starting a podcast and I want to get each one of you guys on there separately, called, I'm not going to tell you the name of it right now. But then I was like, somebody's going to try to take it. So no. But what we're going to do is talk about the real deal and what happens during a process. And it ain't all cherries and rainbows and sunshine. We're going to talk about the real deal and get to the nitty gritty of stuff. So we're going to be doing that. So with that said, that's just a little snippet of it. Before we go, I want everybody to share something that you hope to help. Maybe it's a story about maybe a deal, whether it went, we don't have to share the great stuff. Let's share something that happened, but you guys were able to rectify it or didn't get rectified that may come to your mind, something quick, short. And then also let them know how they can contact you if there's anybody that's looking for a lender, a title company, or escrow company to work with.
Wait, but Kama, can you just tell us how did that lien come up at the end, right before you were to close with the SI?
I don't know if it was the SI, because this was literally in 2000. When did it crash? About 11. It was 2011. All I know is that title messaged me and said, hey, this new lien just popped up. It had just popped up. It was fresh. Wow.
What kind of lien was it?
It was, I forgot what she did. It was some
If I were to guess, maybe the closing protection letter could have triggered that, because we see that sometimes on refinances where, you know, we start out by running title to begin the transaction, and then we just check at the very end to make sure we still have clear title if it's been like a 60 or 90-day period.
Right.
And sometimes things happen within that time frame.
And it was a short sale. So that short sale, we were like 6 months, 7 months in, you know, they weren't going fast at the time or faster. So it was a long time. And then they just reran it just in case. And that popped up. My client didn't have the money. I had the compensation. So they agreed they'll take it out my compensation. So I earned half the check. It's okay though. You know, God always blesses. That's what I will say. But yeah, you
got it done. Well, good. I know Melanie's really great about getting the SIs into our unit. So that's always good. Don't wait to the last minute right before we're going to close to send that in to get it cleared. So thank you, Inland Empire Escrow, for being on top of it.
Shout out. Love that. Love that. Love that.
Thank you, Donna. Appreciate it.
Chris, one question for you. Maybe we should bring this up because I see this often. We were talking earlier about the Hagstead, right? And totally drew a blank there. But regarding when you refinance, right? They can't keep it in a trust. They have to take it out and invest in their name. Do you recommend them to put it back in the trust?
So first off, depending on the trust, you certainly can do a refinance and keep it in the trust. We just need a copy of the trust ahead of time.
Okay.
Now there can be some certain circumstances to where you do need to take it out of the trust. But
I see it often that that they do have to take it out. So what's the circumstances? Like, what are you looking for in a trust where they could leave it?
Just trying to see the identities in the trust in itself. And I think that sometimes the documentation that could be involved with the trust, some lenders will say, you know what, let's just vest it by itself individually, and then we'll have title prepare another deed, putting it back into the trust. I think sometimes people will do that for simplicity purposes, but these days it's a lot easier to get things digitally. And chances are that if they had the property vested in the trust, that they can do it going forward. Now, I say that, but there are a few lenders, like I know Third Federal, well, I shouldn't name names on this, probably not, but I do know there are a few banks that won't let you take out a new loan in the name of a trust. And I've had clients where they specifically said, well, I got a house in a trust, I can't get this loan. And that's where it's like, well, in that case, if you really wanted this loan because the terms were favorable, you can do it and then put it back in the trust after. So there are going to always be cases where that happens, but there are certainly a lot of ways where you can do a refinance. And if you have a copy of your trust, you know, if it's vested in trust currently, we can certainly, most loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, conventional FHA and VA will allow you to vest in a trust.
You know what?
That's a great question, Donna. I'm glad you asked that.
Well, you know, and here's the thing, because I'm glad that you do stress it to them to just, you know, if they do, because for the most part, I do see where they have to vest in their name. But yes, have escrow, and maybe this is a question for Melanie, if they're able to prepare a deed to put it back in the trust, and the title company can record it, because you know, like Kama's situation, I thought it was a refi, but recently I had one where they refinanced and they totally forgot to put it in the trust, and then someone passed away. So now they got to go back to court and do the Hagstead, right? So instead of doing all that, let's just stress to our peeps that, you know, you definitely have to put it back in. And escrow, can you prepare the deed?
Yeah, we absolutely do. As a matter of fact,
Awesome.
we will prepare it, and we obviously prepare both. We'll take it out of the trust. They'll sign
Sure.
it with the loan documents, and we'll prepare We'll prepare one, and they can sign it at the time of the loan documents as well. We'll hang that. You're not hearing any of this, Chris. Don't plug your ears.
No, no. Hey, I do the same. Yeah, I do the same
So,
thing. I do the same. Don't. Yeah, but I
we'll
don't hear
send
it though.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we send it all to title. Title will hang on to that the one putting
Deed.
it back into the trust. And once that deed of trust has been recorded, then they'll record that one putting it back into the trust. So yeah, that's a practice that we
You have to do it.
practice.
It comes
It's a
up.
practice that we practice.
That's
No,
good.
I
Okay, good.
think it's super important. This conversation is more important than what people know. I don't know how many times we've had situations where someone has passed away and they had refinanced the property, especially when they were doing reverse mortgages, and they refinanced the property and never put it back into the trust. And I had a situation where the person had to go through the whole probate situation because it snowballed into other things. That's a whole separate conversation about trust, which you just gave me some ideas, Donna. Thank you. But make sure, for one, if you're a buyer and you're looking, or if you're either in the market or you are going to be in the market to buy a home, you want to put your house in a trust after you close. Okay. The reason being because it just helps. Life happens, y'all. You never know when a person's going to take their last breath, and there is all types of things that happens and goes on. So make sure you do that. But that's a whole, like, you gave me a whole idea. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to start with Chris, Donna, and with Melanie. So just share anything you want to share, any encouragement to people that are looking to buy or want to understand the process more, or anything that might come to mind. Please go ahead. So we'll start with Chris.
Yeah. Again, my name's Chris Daddario, Express Capital. I would just say anything is possible if you put your mind to it, and if you want something bad enough, you can make it happen.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Donna?
Donna Hurlbert here with First American Title. I want to leave you all with this. If you are a homeowner and you are living in your primary residence and you have not filled out your homeowner's exemption, reach out to Comma and she can help you save $7,000 off of your assessed value for your property. So this is all homeowners that currently own. Doesn't matter how long you've owned, but you have to fill out that paperwork to save that $7,000 off of your assessed value. Comma has the tools to look it up to see if you have applied for it, because some people forget. So yeah, that's what I want to leave you with.
Okay, Donna, just real quick, because there was some confusion with someone with that. They're not getting $7,000 off of their taxes.
No.
So
Their
if
assessed
your
value.
assessed value is 100,000, you're paying on 93,000. Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
It's off of your assessed value.
Yeah, someone told their client that it was off of that's how much they're going to get less. I said, nope, please correct that.
Oh, no. Yes, I always
Okay.
stress it's off of your assessed value. So what does that equal to yearly? About $70 to $80, right? It's 7,000 times your tax rate, which is usually 1.25, 1.9, so it's 7,000 times your tax rate. That's what you're saving, but still it's a little something. So you just want to make sure you talk to your clients about that.
Sure.
If I could add on that real quickly, just because I'm sorry, I know we're getting low on time,
Yeah.
but I have a scenario where it's perfect for that, where I have what we call a Prop 19 tax transfer basis that's happening on a transaction I'm actually closing in 2 days. And we called the county assessor, and Comma will probably do a whole nother segment on Prop 19. But if it's 55 years or older, you can transfer your current tax basis to a new property that you're buying. And specifically, when they were filling out the form, what they were looking at with the home that was sold was they were specifically looking to see if they had that $7,000 homestead exemption, because for them, that proved that it was owner occupied. So in addition to saving the money immediately, like Don is talking about, by having that exemption, that can make your life a little bit easier if you're trying for future savings through exemptions through Prop 19.
Yep,
I'm getting
absolutely, Chris.
educated. I love this.
That is so true. You definitely need your homeowner's exemption to apply for Prop 19. So yes, it's super important to have it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And then Melanie.
And I'm Melanie Cisneros with Inland Empire Escrow. I don't have encouragement. I have a tip. I want to reiterate, anytime you have wiring instructions, always verify them, whether you're a buyer sending your wire into escrow. And don't get annoyed if you're a seller and escrow is calling you to verify your wiring instructions to send out funds to you. Don't get annoyed with them. It's to save you. You wanted us to tell a story about what comes up in a transaction. That was one of my things I was going to share. Don't get annoyed when people when my office or any other escrow office calls you to verify your information. It's to protect you.
Yes.
Always verify your wiring instructions, and don't get annoyed when people call to verify yours.
You know what I'm gonna do as I'm talking, as you guys were talking, I was like, okay, now I got to break this down. We have to have a separate interview because there's so much great information in here. And yes, we want people to buy a home, but you need to understand what you're doing, why you're buying it, what's in it, what happens if something comes up on title, what happens if something happens during escrow. We have to have these conversations. So thank you guys for joining me, joining us. Thank you, Donna, Melanie, Chris, for taking time out of your day to do so. For those on Facebook, you guys, they're all on Facebook as well. So you guys can follow them on Instagram. And if you guys have questions, let me know. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have all their information as well on in the description. So that way you have a way to get out to them. So thank you so much. You in Facebook world. You guys have a good one. So I'm gonna stop the live stream. If you have questions for real estate, call me, Burton, broker owner, CMB Realty Services. And remember, I'm always here to make your real estate dreams a reality.